I was the Wolf of Wall Street until I woke up as a literal wolf. They think I'm a fragile omega, meant to be a political pawn. They don't realize I've already calculated the cost of their entire empire, and I'm here for a hostile takeover. Everything is too loud, too bright. No, not bright. My eyes are just taking in too much light. I can see the dust motes dancing in the corner of this dark room like they're under a spotlight. Every one of them a tiny spiraling galaxy. The ceiling above me is lacquered cedar, 12 feet up, inlaid with ivory cranes. I can count the brushstrokes in the paint from down here. And the smell. The smell is a physical weight. Old parchment, warm sandalwood candle wax, and beneath it all, sunk into the very walls like a confession someone tried to bury, the metallic tang of old blood and newer betrayal. My CEO brain is trying to categorize everything like it's an intake meeting. First impression of the room: Imperial, mid-dynasty, deliberately ostentatious. Square footage, roughly 400. Exit points: one door, one window with iron bars recently oiled. Estimated guards outside, 3. I know this because I can hear them. Not just their boots, their heartbeats. The one closest to the door has an irregular rhythm, stressed or perhaps dietary. I file it away. But this body, this new, impossible, infuriating body is not cooperating with my assessment protocol. It's trembling. The hands, my hands now, I suppose, are small, boned like a bird. The silk robe pooled around me is the deep teal of a consort's gift color, which tells me almost everything I need to know about my current social position before I've even looked in a mirror. I won't, by the way, not yet. Looking at a face I don't recognize is an inefficiency I can't afford right now. What I can feel, far more alarming than the trembling, is a second presence inside my chest. Not a metaphor, literally a second heartbeat. Slower, heavier, ancient. It pulses against my ribcage like something very large pressing its nose against a window. A wolf, my wolf, pacing, waiting, watching everything I watch, but with an appetite that would have gotten me investigated by HR in my previous life. They think I'm distressed. I can hear them outside speculating about it, a language that is not Mandarin, not Korean, not any living tongue I studied, yet my new brain processes it like a mother tongue. Convenient. I'll worry about the metaphysics later. Right now, they don't realize that what they're interpreting as an Omega's distress spiral is simply a man calibrating his instruments. I focus my hearing, the way you focus a lens, not wide, but deep. 3 guards. The nervous one. His scent is acrid, burnt rubber on asphalt. Someone threatened him recently, someone he's genuinely afraid of. The second guard is bored, deep, slow breaths, that sour, sweet smell of a man counting down the hours to his meal. The third guard is different, alert, competent. His scent is clean metal and pine resin. He's not bored, he's listening too. I make a note. That one is either an asset or the most dangerous person in my immediate vicinity. Possibly both. I shift my gaze to the window. It is midnight, but I can see the courtyard below in gradients of blue-silver, as clear as a gray morning. 2 more guards crossing in a pattern that repeats every 4 minutes. A kitchen chimney in the far northeast corner still exhales. Someone is awake and cooking. Across the inner wall, a light burns in a high tower, irregular. Someone reading, or someone who can't sleep. I track every moving shadow like a stock ticker. My wolf wants to howl at the injustice of these bars. The CEO in me is already calculating the cost of every life in this compound and what each of them might be worth, for or against me. I sit up. I straighten my spine. I press my palms flat against the cold stone floor and let the temperature ground me the way a cold shower grounds a man after a bad quarter. This is not a disaster. This is an unfamiliar market. I have been dropped into an unfamiliar market before. I once rebuilt a company from $17 million in debt to a 9-figure acquisition in 3 years. I was 31. I had less sleep and worse coffee. I can work with this. Low, dangerous, a whisper that has no business being as controlled as it is. A door creaks. Not my door. A side panel, half hidden behind the silk screen painted with phoenixes. A man enters. He smells of arrogance and cheap power, that particular combination of expensive perfume over the unwashed confidence of a man who has never once been told no. He's a high-ranking alpha. His presence floods the room like a gas leak, thick, pressurized, designed to suffocate. He thinks it suffocates me. He looks at me the way a man looks at a table setting, a decoration, a prize. His eyes are already calculating something that is not my intelligence, and his hand extends toward my face with the lazy entitlement of someone who has never once considered that the thing they're reaching for might reach back. And for a split second, just one, the CEO steps aside. My vision turns red at the edges, not rage, not exactly, more like a system switching modes, emergency protocol. I feel my canine teeth shifting with a sensation like pressure releasing behind my ears, quiet, powerful, precise. My bones don't shatter and reform like something from a horror film. They reorganize, purposeful and ancient with the sound of a vault door that knows exactly what it's doing. My pupils, which I know are dilated beyond human range, fix on the pulse jumping in the hollow of his throat. I am an Omega. By the laws of this world, I am the lowest rung. The gift, the bargaining chip wrapped in silk. I have a designation that this world uses to tell me I am soft, that I am meant to receive, that I am to be grateful for whoever claims me. I am also a wolf who has survived 1,000 boardrooms and buried 3 hostile takeover attempts before breakfast. He takes one more step. I let my eyes meet his, really meet them, for the first time, and I watch his face do something it has probably never done before in his entire titled, pampered, consequence-free life. It goes pale. Good. Now we understand each other. I don't say a word. I don't need to. My wolf has already said everything that needed saying in the oldest language in the world. He stumbles backward, finds the door, leaves. I retract the shift like folding a contract back into an envelope. Neat, clean, proprietary. I stood, smoothed the silk of my robe, and turned to find the competent third guard now standing in the doorway, not running, not retreating, watching. His expression was not fear. It was a calculation that mirrored my own. He stepped forward, his voice barely audible. No Omega has a pulse this steady while surrounded by that kind of pressure, he murmured, his eyes moving over me like he was reading a document he didn't expect. And no Omega's eyes, he stopped himself. Then, who are you? The Imperial audience hall is a sea of sharks, and they have dressed me as bait. Pale teal silk, hair pinned with jade, cheeks dusted to appear more delicate. I am led in on the arm of a palace escort as though I might faint from the grandeur. I keep my head bowed at precisely the angle that communicates submission without communicating stupidity. There is a difference, and most people in this room are not paying close enough attention to notice it. That is their first mistake. My ears are pinned to every whisper in the hall, the way a trader pins to a live market data. To my left, 2 ministers discussing the harvest yields in the eastern provinces, inflated figures, both of them know it, neither of them willing to be the first to say so. Cowardice wearing patriotism's clothes. To my right, 3 court ladies speculating about my origins, my scent, whether I'll last the season. I file their voices away. Witnesses are always useful. I can hear the Emperor's heartbeat, 3 rows up. Elevated throne, silk curtains doing the work his body can no longer do. The man behind them is old, and his heart knows it. The rhythm is uneven. Not dramatically so, not yet, but it has the cadence of an engine burning its last reserves. The throne will be empty within 2 years, perhaps 1. That changes the timeline considerably. The wine is poured at the head table. I smell it from 40 feet away. Clean grape, old oak, and underneath both of those things, faint but unmistakable, the green bitter of nightshade alkaloid. I don't react. I file it. Someone in this room wants someone at that table dead, and the selection of the target will tell me everything I need to know about the power structure here. I am, if nothing else, an expert at reading the agenda behind an agenda. To them, I am a decoration, a political concession wrapped in silk, a number on someone else's balance sheet. To me, this room is a balance sheet too, and every single person in it, every whisper, every heartbeat, every chemical signal riding the air is data, and every single one of them is currently in the red. Then I see him. He is standing at the edge of the elevated platform, slightly apart from the other court nobles, and for a moment my highly efficient cataloging system simply stops, stutters, reboots. The Crown Prince, my supposed alpha, my, in the language of this world's biology, fated partner, political asset, and apparently the reason I was gifted here like a particularly expensive piece of furniture. His scent is not like the others. Every other alpha in this room wears their designation like a weapon, heavy, saturated, a chemical shout designed to establish dominance before they've said a single word. His is different. It smells like the forest after a storm. That specific moment when the rain has stopped and the air is charged and clean and cold, and everything smells like wet bark and lightning, and the promise that the storm did not, in fact, kill the roots. Clean, sharp, cold. And underneath it, underneath all of that, something older, something that doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. My inner wolf goes completely still for the first time since I woke up in this world. Not out of submission, not out of fear, out of recognition. The pacing stops, the growling stops. For 3 full seconds, there is nothing but silence behind my ribs, the way a city goes quiet in the first seconds after an earthquake, before the alarms start. He is mine. I know it the way I know a sound investment, not from excitement, but from that bone-deep certainty that settles in the chest before the mind has finished processing the evidence. He is mine, which means he is currently in danger. Because I can see what the wolf wants me to see, what the CEO has already mapped in every face in this room. They don't see a leader when they look at him. They see a target. They see an unguarded flank. They see a power vacuum with a face on it. And every single one of them is quietly calculating how close they'd have to get before the first strike could land. They have no idea I'm already mapping the trajectory of every blade in this room, and every blade is already accounted for. Duke Gareth I have already identified from the scent profile I built during my walk-in. Old money, new paranoia, and the particular cologne of a man who compensates for inadequacy with spectacle, moves towards the prince at the edge of the platform. He makes it look accidental. His shoulder connects with the prince's at the worst possible angle, enough to force the prince to either acknowledge the insult or absorb it publicly. A test. See how your dog responds to the leash. My hand twitches under my long sleeve. I can feel my claws wanting to slide out, that quiet, pressurized unbuckling under each fingertip, like a pen clicking open. My night vision sharpens until the Duke's neck is the only thing in my field of vision, and I can see with absolute precision the exact spot, just below the left jaw where the carotid branches, where a single strike from a person with sufficient force and sufficient anger would end this conversation and approximately 40 more that the Duke is currently planning to have. Patience, I remind myself. A CEO doesn't strike until the market is open. You don't burn your position before the trade is placed. The Duke thinks this is a small provocation at a public ceremony. He thinks he's gauging the prince's reaction for future leverage. He has no idea he has just provoked the only entity in this room with a complete strategic overview of the board. I let him have his little moment. I bow my head. I play my role. The silk sleeve hides my hand, and behind my ribs, the wolf sits back down. Not because it agrees, but because it has learned in the last 12 hours to trust the CEO's read on timing. They'll find out eventually. This Omega doesn't just bark. We were leaving the hall when I heard it, 300 feet away, through 2 walls, above the ambient noise of a court in its evening dissolution. A single, unmistakable sound, the tension click of a crossbow mechanism being engaged, in the rafters of the outer corridor. Aimed by the angle of the sound signature, not at me, at the prince, at his route back to his chambers. I took the prince's arm before his own guard captain did, redirecting our path with the casual authority of a new consort being proprietary, which I was, and said nothing. He looked at me sideways. I smiled, which is something I do not often do, and which I suspect frightened him slightly more than the crossbow would have. The real hunt, I realized, had not yet begun. The prince's private chamber smells of him, storm forest, cold stone, the faintest undercurrent of leather and lamp oil, and the specific brand of exhaustion that only comes from carrying responsibility for too long without anyone to set it down with. The doors click shut behind us, and the silence hits like a change in air pressure. I breathe it in. I let my wolf settle. I have approximately 45 minutes before the guard rotation changes outside, which means this is the window in which the most dangerous conversations happen. He stands by the window. His silhouette is cut sharply against the blue dark of the moonlit courtyard, and with my vision I can see details his chamber mirror probably doesn't. The set of his jaw, over-controlled. The white knuckling of his fingers against the stone ledge. The slight forward hunch of shoulders that have spent years bracing for impact. He is, I realize, genuinely trying to protect me. He thinks I need it. It is, objectively, the most misguided thing I have witnessed since the third quarter earnings call where my CFO insisted the brand pivot into NFTs. "Don't worry," he says. His voice is low and worn down at the edges, like good paper that's been folded too many times. "You won't be hurt. I'll find a way to send you away, back to safety, back to somewhere they can't reach you." Safety. He said the word with the certainty of a man who still believes it exists somewhere on the map. My inner wolf tilts its head. Safety. As though I did not 12 hours ago dissuade a high court alpha from whatever he was planning by doing nothing more than making eye contact. As though I am not, right now, passively tracking 6 distinct threat vectors in and around this palace. As though the word safety has ever applied to someone like me in any world I've inhabited. He is playing the tragic hero. He has assigned himself the role, learned all the lines, and is performing it with total earnest commitment. He wants to save me. It is, I will admit in the privacy of my own skull, touching. The wolf notes it with something that might, in a kinder organism, be called affection. The CEO notes it as a critical liability that needs immediate restructuring. I walk forward. Not in the soft, tentative half-steps I've been performing all day for the court's benefit. I walk the way I walk, the way I have always walked, with the flat, deliberate momentum of someone entering a room they already own. I stop exactly 3 inches behind him, inside his personal space, a distance that no submissive Omega would dare calculate, let alone close. I hear his heart skip, then quicken, then do something confused and complicated that I don't have the time or the emotional vocabulary to fully analyze. He turns. His alpha instincts have flared. I can smell the spike of alert, that sudden charge in his scent like ozone before lightning. He expects to find a frightened consort who stumbled too close in the dark. He finds a predator. Safety, I say, is a luxury you cannot afford right now, Your Highness. I watch him open his mouth and close it again. The hair on the back of his neck has risen. I can see each individual strand from here. I take a slow breath and let out just a fraction of my wolf's presence. Not aggressive, not territorial, just real, like showing someone a business card that has a different name on it than they expected. The Duke is moving his funds, not quietly. He's doing it through 4 proxy lenders in the merchant district, and the paper trail, if anyone thought to look, leads back to a foreign seal. Your third palace guard, the alert one by the East Corridor, has been receiving payments from a third party for 17 days. And the tea that was set out for you tonight contains enough concentrated nightshade to stop a man twice your size. He stares at me. His mouth does something between a question and disbelief, and the very first shoots of genuine, alarmed respect. I step into his space, the last inch. I meet his eyes directly, which is, I have gathered, another thing Omegas simply do not do with Alpha royalty. You don't need to protect me, Your Highness. You need to listen to me. I hold his gaze without flinching, without performing, without the silk-soft theater I've been deploying all day. Just me. Just this. Because I didn't come here to be your mate. I came here to ensure you win. and in 12 years of business across 4 industries and 3 hostile acquisition attempts, I have never once lost a merger. He gripped my wrist, not threateningly, but with the sudden compulsive grab of someone reaching for something before it disappears. "Who are you?" The question was barely audible. "Just breathe." I looked at his hand on my wrist, then at his face, then at the map of the palace courtyard on his writing desk that I had, in the last 4 minutes, already fully memorized. I pulled my wrist free, gently, but with the kind of gentleness that leaves no ambiguity about capability. "I'm your most expensive asset," I said, turning toward the desk, "and I am deeply underutilized. Now sit down, Your Highness. We have an empire to reorganize, and I prefer not to do it standing up." 3 a.m. The palace is silent to human ears. To me, it is a roar of layered data, the creak of settling cedar beams contracting in the night cold, the distant heartbeat of a kitchen dog dreaming something that makes it whimper, the breathing patterns of every sleeping guard I've cataloged in the East Wing. 4 on duty, 2 already drifted. And beneath it all, sharp as a blade in a bed of silk, a shift in the air currents that should not be there. I'm standing in the shadows of the prince's antechamber doorway, still dressed, as I have been every night since I arrived. He doesn't know I'm here. He sleeps. He is, when unconscious, something that my wolf finds disproportionately peaceful to observe, which is information I am absolutely not processing right now because there are 2 assassins scaling the east balcony, and operational priorities are operational priorities. I isolate the scent. Cold steel, oiled, not rusty, professional-grade equipment, and underneath it, mountain laurel, the specific bitter floral signature of the poison they've used to tip their blades. It's called white sleep in the court apothecary's logs. I read them yesterday, naturally, and it's fast, paralytic, and designed to mimic natural causes in a man who is already stressed. Very tidy. I appreciate the professionalism, even as I intend to object strenuously to the outcome. I don't call for the guards. Guards can be bribed. Silence, as I have noted, cannot. I feel my wolf rising, not the frantic surge of the first night, but the calm, enormous competence of something that has hunted before and knows exactly how much energy the task requires, and no more. My muscles reorganize, my vision sharpens until the darkness is simply another kind of light, silver blue, precise, revealing the ledge of the balcony and the 2 figures on it with total, merciless clarity. One is heavier, probably the lead. The other moves faster, the one who'll go for the prince, while the first holds the door. Standard 2-man extract protocol, I note clinically. I step out into the moonlight. Let them see me. The first assassin freezes on the ledge, his boot skids on the rain-damp stone, and his scent does something I have come to find deeply satisfying. It turns to pure, undiluted, acidic fear. The kind the body releases when something in the ancient part of the brain that predates language sends up a single, wordless signal: apex predator, flee. He expected a crying omega. He didn't expect a predator waiting for its dinner to arrive. I move. I won't describe it in detail, partly because it happened faster than I can narrate it, and partly because some proprietary methodologies are best left undisclosed. What I will say is, 1 strike to the throat, silent, efficient, final. The second one tried to reverse off the balcony, and I'd already closed the distance before his weight shifted. I can smell his sweat. I can hear his heart in full panicked sprint. I lean close to his ear as he slides down the wall. "Tell your master," I whisper, very quietly, very clearly, "that the prince's shadow has teeth." I step back. I straighten my robes. I locate the silk handkerchief in my sleeve and wipe a stray drop of blood from my cheekbone with the focus of a man removing a coffee stain before a presentation. Disgusting. Assassination is such an untidy way to do business. I much prefer the kind where everyone survives, and I simply own more of the market afterward. I look back at the prince. He hasn't stirred. Good. He needs his sleep. The council meeting tomorrow morning is a trap laid 3 moves deep, and he will need every resource he has. I'll have the bodies cleared before the sun rises and the ledge cleaned before the morning guard rotation. A good executive always cleans up his own mess, and then he gets back to work. I was returning to my room, my task complete, and the courtyard below already resuming its nighttime quiet, when I turned the corridor and found the prince standing in his doorway, awake, eyes fully open, the kind of open that means he had not been asleep for some time. He looked at me, at my hands, at the handkerchief, at the absolute calm of a person who had just done something irreversible and found it merely logistically demanding. His voice, when it came, was barely sound. "No Omega has a pulse this steady while surrounded by bodies," he whispered. His alpha eyes found mine in the dark, and he could see me, I realized. My eyes were still gold. "Who are you?" "Your Omega," I said. "The hostile takeover, wherein 12 mercenaries bring a fight and leave as an object lesson. I smell them before they hit the courtyard wall. 12, maybe 13. There's one hanging back who is either a coward or a coordinator, and coordinators are always the priority target. Heavy boots on wet stone, oiled leather, the iron sweat of men who've been marching, and underneath it all, unmistakable, a chemical signature I had to look up in the Palace Herbalist's archive this afternoon after I first caught its trace near the western gate. Wolfbane, a sedative compound specific to ABO biology. It suppresses the shift, slows the Omega's biology to approximate unconsciousness, and leaves no traceable marker in a post-mortem examination. They're not here to kill the prince. They're here to take him somewhere he'll never be found. My wolf is not growling. It is screaming. The kind of primal, territorial howl that fills every cell of this body, every nerve, every bone, with the singular, ancient instruction: protect what is yours. I've heard that instruction before, in the form of my CFO calling me at 2 a.m. during a predatory acquisition. The adrenaline feels remarkably similar, actually. The clarity is the same. 12 to 1. I've restructured companies with worse odds and fewer assets. I kick the heavy oak table into the doorway just as the first 3 breach the corridor, a crash of old hardwood that buys me exactly 4 seconds of confusion, which is all I need. They see me standing in the middle of the room, a small Omega in a silk nightrobe, disheveled, apparently terrified. They hesitate. Fatal mistake. In business, if you hesitate at the pivot point, you lose the market. In a fight, you lose your life. The calculus is identical. I launch myself forward. My night vision locks onto the crossbow trajectories the moment the bolts leave the mechanisms. I see them in my field of vision like slow, predictable data points, and I twist midair with a half shift that pops my shoulders and repositions my center of gravity in a way that this silk robe was absolutely not designed to accommodate. My claws, fully extended now, which is an experience I will reflect on during a calmer moment, rip through the lead mercenary's chest plate with a sound like tearing canvas. He goes down. The man behind him swings a blade. I duck under it and come up inside his guard, one precise impact to the sternum, and the wall behind him handles the rest. The room becomes a blur of scent and silver instinct. I am tracking 6 heartbeats simultaneously. Their rhythms tell me their position, their confidence, their next move. One tries to circle behind me. I don't even turn. I hear the soft creak of his weight shift, the intake of breath before strike, and I drop sweep his legs before he commits the blow, then collapse his windpipe before he hits the floor. Efficient. I do not enjoy this. I want to be precise about that, but I am profoundly, anatomically good at it, and there is something in the wolf's architecture that recognizes a threat to the pack and answers it with a totality that the CEO in me can only describe as exceptional execution. 1, 3, 6 down. My vision is gold at the edges. I'm breathing steady. The remaining mercenaries have done what surviving mercenaries do. Formed a tight knot at the far wall and started weighing their exit options. The coordinator, I was right, he hung back, has his Wolfbane sprayer out, hand trembling with the specific vibration of a man who has just watched his entire plan dissolve in approximately 90 seconds. I walk toward him, deliberately. I retract my claws, the quiet click of them sliding back, one by one, and I let him see that I'm doing it consciously, which is somehow, I have found, more frightening than if I hadn't. I'm covered in blood that is not mine, my silk robe is shredded at both sleeves, and my eyes are still burning gold in the dark room. I stop 8 inches from his face. I can hear his pulse in his ears. I lean in. "Go back to whoever signed your paycheck," I say, very pleasantly. "Tell them that no one touches my alpha." I let him run. He would carry the message, that was the point. I turned back to the destroyed room and found the prince standing in the inner doorway, and behind him, pale-faced, the head of the Imperial Council, who had apparently been meeting privately with the prince when the breach began, and had, wisely, stayed very still in the dark. He stared at me, at the room, at the 6 men on the floor. I looked at him, this man who signed every decree, who appointed every general, who had, I had recently determined, been maneuvering the Prime Minister's agenda from the inside for 11 years. He thought he was watching an anomaly. I looked at him the way I look at a balance sheet that just revealed a structural fraud. "Good morning," I said. "I think it's time we had a conversation about your investment portfolio." The morning sun fills the dining hall with that particular quality of gold light that painters spend their entire careers trying to recreate and never quite managing. It is, objectively, beautiful. The palace cook has arranged the table with genuine artistry, lacquered trays, steam rising from porcelain, the smell of roasted duck and fresh buns warm from the oven. It would all be much more enjoyable if I couldn't smell, from the moment I entered the room, the bright chemical signature of nightshade concentrate in the tea. I don't sit down. I don't pick up the menu card that's been laid out for me. I don't smile. Or rather, I do smile, but I've been told on multiple occasions in my previous life that my smile in professional settings reads as a threat assessment wearing a friendly expression. The palace cook and the head servant are standing by the sideboard in the posture of men who are trying very hard to look like they have nothing to think about. The servant's heartbeat is already elevated. The cook's is trying to be calm, and failing. I gesture to the golden cup. "A fine brew," I say softly. The room, and there are 12 people in it, the prince, 4 council members, assorted attendants, goes very quiet. But it seems a waste to drink it alone. I turn to the head servant with the pleasantness of a senior partner conducting an annual review. "Why don't you have the first sip?" The silence that follows is the specific silence of 12 people holding their breath. The servant stammers, protocol, his status, his unworthiness. I step closer, just 1 step. I let my voice drop, not in volume, but in register, so that it carries that subsonic edge my wolf contributes to moments of this kind. In my old world, we called this a performance review, and yours is failing. I push the cup toward him. His hand shakes so hard the tea sloshes the rim, and where it hits the polished marble floor, it sizzles. A small sound, a very specific sound, the sound of a confession. He drops to his knees. He doesn't even need to drink it. His fear confessed for him, and the sizzling marble did the rest. I step back. I turn to the cook. He is older, more armored in his status. He has served this kitchen for 30 years, and he has, I suspect, developed the conviction that tenure is a form of immunity. He is wrong about that in the same way that a great many people are wrong about immunity, until they aren't. I pick up a piece of the roasted meat from the platter he's just placed in front of the prince's seat. I turn it over in my fingers. "This," I announce to the silent room, "is seasoned with a spice that does not belong in a royal kitchen." The cook's face goes red. He blusters, my craft, my honor, the insult of it. And I wait for him to finish with the patience of a woman who once let a hostile board talk for 40 minutes before she dissolved their authority in 3 sentences. Then I offer him the fork. "If it's your masterpiece," I say with a grin that has been described as shark-like on more than one professional occasion, "surely you'd be honored to eat the first bite, in front of the prince, in front of the council." I pause. In front of me. He reaches for his knife. He thinks he can resolve this with violence. People who are about to be exposed almost always revert to that. My wolf is faster than his panic. I take his wrist, gently relative to my capability, and I apply exactly enough pressure to communicate what I could do if I chose to, the way you apply exactly enough leverage to a negotiation to communicate the same thing. The sound of the bones groaning in their sheaths is enough. The fork goes in his mouth. The room holds its breath. 5 seconds. 10. His face does what faces do when the body is contradicting everything the mind is still insisting. He goes down, and I step back and wipe my hands on the white tablecloth and let my eyes do the thing they do sometimes, when I'm not careful. Flash gold, briefly, like a lamp behind amber glass, and I look at the council members in their frozen, bloodless horror. The kitchen, I say pleasantly, is closed for restructuring. From this point forward, I approve every contract, every coin, and every meal served in this palace. I let the pause do its work. Does anyone else wish to volunteer for a tasting? No one volunteered. The council filed out in the specific silence of men who had just recalculated their risk exposure. I waited until the last of them had gone, and then, standing in that sunlit dining room with its gorgeous, deadly breakfast and its cooling confession on the marble floor, I heard it. From the kitchen corridor. Not a footstep, not a voice. A sound so small that any human ear would have catalogued it as silence. The soft, friction creak of a hinge that had been recently oiled on a door that officially did not exist on any palace schematic I had yet examined. And through the crack, already closing, the specific, sharp smell of foreign ink, foreign paper, and a seal I had only encountered once before, in the personal correspondence of the Prime Minister. Someone had been here before the food was prepared. The poison was not improvised. This was a scheduled delivery. The guards are still dragging the cook's body out of the hall. The marble needs to be cleaned, a fact I note with the same mild professional dissatisfaction with which I would note, say, a formatting error in a board presentation. Fixable, unideal, moving on. The council members have left, and the attendants have gone with them, and now it is only the prince and me in the gold-lit hall with the cooling tea and the smell of a morning that went sideways. I turn my back on the room and walk toward him. He's standing by his throne, not sitting on it, which tells me something about how he holds authority. He treats it as a post to stand near, not a seat to occupy. He has his hand on the hilt of his sword in the instinctive way of someone who learned very young that the blade was more reliable than the people around it. He is looking at me the way people look at something that has just rearranged their entire understanding of physics. "Who are you?" he asks, low. The same question he asked me in the corridor 3 nights ago, and I didn't fully answer then because the timing wasn't right. The timing is right now. I stop exactly 3 inches from him, my favorite operational distance, I've decided, close enough to make the point, far enough to respect the geometry of the situation. "I'm the person who just saved your life," I say, for the 4th time in 6 days if we're keeping score, which I am. I let that land, and in my world, that makes me your most expensive creditor. He reaches out, slowly, with the careful deliberateness of an alpha who is experiencing multiple contradictory instincts simultaneously, and his fingers brush the dried blood stain on my cheekbone that I apparently missed with the handkerchief. I don't flinch. My wolf doesn't bare its teeth. It does something I can only describe as lean into the contact, which is information about myself that I am categorizing as non-operationally relevant at this time and filing accordingly. "They told me you were fragile," he says. There's something in his voice that I have not heard from him before, not the controlled, measured diction of a prince performing his office, something underneath that, something almost wondering. I lean forward slightly. "Fragile things break, Your Highness." I hold his gaze, gold-brown, steady, starting to see me in the way that the rest of this court has not yet managed. I don't break, I dismantle. There's a difference. I step back, and because the moment needs closing with something actionable rather than something sentimental. This empire is a sinking ship. The accounts are fraudulent, the alliances are compromised, and your prime minister has been feeding intelligence to a foreign interest for, by my estimate, the last 7 years. I know how to fix the ledger. The question is whether you're willing to let me." He stares at me for a long moment. Long enough that I am genuinely uncertain of the outcome, which is a feeling I have not experienced in quite some time and find both irritating and clarifying. Then he steps aside from the throne. He gestures to it not as an offer exactly, more as a question. I look at the throne, I look at him, I look at the hall. "I don't want the chair," I say. "I want the desk." I walked out of the hall without looking back, the silk of my robes in rather worse shape than they'd been that morning, and my dignity considerably better. "Clean up this mess," I said to the remaining attendants without breaking stride. "And someone bring me a fresh tea, one that isn't attempting a hostile acquisition of my nervous system. We have an empire to restructure, and I work better with something warm." Behind me, I heard the prince begin to laugh, quietly, the way a man laughs when he's not entirely sure if the world he's in is the one he started the morning in. I smiled at the corridor wall. Good. Uncertainty is productive. Uncertainty means the market is open. Let me tell you about Prime Minister Gareth. He is 63 years old, which in this empire is a patriarch, a man whose age alone commands a degree of deference. He has held his position for 22 years through a combination of genuine intelligence, strategic ruthlessness, and the careful cultivation of a reputation for loyalty so thorough that not a single person in this court has yet to look at the ledgers behind it. He orchestrated my transmigration. I know this now, after a week of forensic work on the palace's correspondence archives that would have been unremarkable in my old life and was apparently unprecedented in this one. He arranged for me to be sent here because he needed the prince occupied and softened. A political gift, a distraction, a pliant, beautiful Omega to redirect the prince's attention while the coup was assembled. He did not adequately research the gift. An army would be the obvious answer. An army is what he would expect. Accusations, evidence, a trial, the cumbersome machinery of imperial justice that he has, for 22 years, managed to redirect toward his own ends. So, I don't use an army. I use the one weapon for which there is no defense in any world I've inhabited: information precisely deployed. I start a rumor. Not a crude one, nothing so blunt as the minister is corrupt, which is both unprovable and easily countered. I start the kind of rumor that lives in the language of commerce and fear, and the specific anxiety of men who have put their wealth somewhere they're not sure is solid. I let it be known through 3 separate merchant intermediaries who I have identified as unaffiliated with Gareth's network and motivated by competitive interest that the soil surveys in the Prime Minister's eastern territories have returned troubling results, that the land is salted, that the aquifer beneath the northern estates has been tested and found wanting, that the harvests of the last 3 years, so proudly reported, have been, quietly, among people who know, augmented with imports to disguise the actual yields. None of this is precisely true. Some of it has the texture of truth. All of it is unfalsifiable within the timeline I've given the market to react. Within 48 hours, Gareth's primary financial allies begin making enquiries. Within 72 hours, 3 of his 6 major land-holding partners have quietly withdrawn their co-signatures from shared ventures, citing diversification of risk. Within 5 days, his access to the merchant-class credit network, on which I have determined he depends for approximately 40% of his operations' liquidity, is frozen. Not by law, by fear. By the market's most ancient mechanism, the sudden collective suspicion that the ground might not be solid. I watch it happen from the council chamber window, eating an orange that has been certified safe by my new and very motivated kitchen staff, and I feel something that I will reluctantly identify as profound professional satisfaction. His allies desert him, his money dries up, and then, because a man like Gareth, when cornered, does not negotiate, does not surrender, does not adapt, he does exactly what my projections indicated he would do. He reaches for the only currency he has left. He is going to the prince directly, tonight, with everything he has left, which is a wolf shift and 30 years of buried anger and nothing left to lose. My wolf is already standing, my eyes are already gold. And the CEO, for the first time since I arrived in this world, steps fully aside. I was halfway across the courtyard when I heard it, felt it really through the stone beneath my feet, the deep subsonic vibration of an alpha shift at full force. Not a half shift, not a suppressed one, a full transformation, the kind that shakes the air like a thunderclap, the kind that releases a pressure wave you feel in your teeth. The palace gardens went dark as the lanterns guttered, and from the direction of the prince's private garden wall came the sound, unmistakable, terrible, enormous, of something very large landing on the other side of it. A pause. Then, very quietly, the CEO closed his last file. The wolf opened its eyes. The garden is dark, the lanterns are out, and the moon is behind clouds, and for any human eyes, this would be a darkness you drown in. For mine, it is a reading room. Silver-blue gradients on every surface, the gravel paths, the stone planters, the ornamental trees, the high garden walls, and moving through it with the crashing, devastating confidence of something that has never once in its existence had cause to be afraid, Prime Minister Gareth. His wolf form is enormous, scarred across the flanks and shoulder where old battles have written their notes in silver white. His fur is the dark gray-black of deep winter. His eyes are amber-lit and burning with a rage that has, I can see, been metabolizing for a long time. This is not tonight's rage. This is the rage of a man who has spent 20 years watching a prince he despises hold power he believes should be his, and has finally run out of reasons to contain it. The prince is in the garden. He came out when the lights went down exactly as I knew he would, because he is the kind of man who moves toward the problem, which is both his greatest strength and the thing I stay awake worrying about. He doesn't have a blade yet. He came too fast. He is standing in the dark center of the garden path, an alpha with his hands raised and his designation flaring full force, trying to meet this threat on his feet. Gareth is 20 feet from him and closing. I take off my outer robe. It falls somewhere behind me. I don't look where. I have been managing the shift since the first night, using it surgically, partially, the way you use a specific tool for a specific job. I have been keeping the wolf at executive function because the situation required precision. The situation has changed. The situation now requires something older and more absolute than precision. I let go. The shift doesn't hurt. I want to be accurate about this. It doesn't hurt the way the novels of my previous world insisted it would. It feels like releasing a breath held for 30 years, like every bone finally going to exactly where it was always supposed to be, like something enormous and patient and ancient unfolding from a very small space and remembering itself. I am white, pure white, the color of old glaciers, of winter dawn, of stone that has been worn smooth by 10,000 years of water. My wolf is not large in the way Gareth's is large, not the bulk and the muscle and the brute mass of an alpha's shift. I am long. I am deep-chested. I am built in a way that belongs to no breed this world has seen in living memory, because what I carry in this body is not the wolf of a court omega. What I carry is something that predates the court, predates the empire, predates the designation system that has spent 1,000 years trying to put wolves in boxes. I am a direwolf, ancient bloodline, thought extinct, the kind of thing you find in the myth records of civilizations that came before this one, described in terms that are more prayer than biology. Gareth stops. He stops the way a large fire stops when something larger and wetter lands on it. His amber eyes find me in the dark. I know he can see me. My eyes are burning gold in the silver garden, and for a moment, even his rage is drowned out by something more fundamental, something every wolf carries at the species level. The recognition of a hierarchy he did not know existed until this moment. I don't roar. I don't charge. I step into the garden path and I look at him, and I let him see fully, completely, without the professional management I've been applying for 9 days, exactly what I am. The wolf that this body carries. The wolf that chose this body, or was chosen by it, or was sent to it by whatever mechanism transmigration uses. The wolf that will be standing between Gareth and the Alpha Prince until there is nothing left of Gareth to stand against. He charges anyway, because he's desperate, and desperation makes decisions that intelligence would refuse. I don't fight him, I hunt him. There's a difference. Fighting is two forces meeting at a point. Hunting is something that already knows the outcome, moving through the available space until the outcome arrives. I use the garden, every path, every shadow pool, every ornamental tree, and my night vision makes the darkness my instrument. I am everywhere he isn't expecting. I am already at his next position when he arrives at his current one. I am patient in the way that glaciers are patient, slowly, inexorably, absolutely. When it ends quietly, the way most real things end, not with theater, but with the simple final cessation of resistance. Gareth is down. He is alive. I made a choice about that, a CEO's choice, because a dead villain is a martyr, and a shattered, exposed, publicly broken one is a lesson. He is shifted back, lying in the gravel path looking up at me in a silence that has replaced everything he thought he knew about this world. I stand over him. I am still in shift. I lower my head until my eyes are level with his, and I let the wolf speak, in the language that predates words, in the register that bypasses everything except the oldest part of the brain. You called me a gift for the prince. You were wrong. I am the Alpha Prince's executioner, and I have decided you may live, only so that you can spend the rest of your life explaining to everyone you meet exactly what happened tonight. Behind me, I hear the prince's breathing, steadied now, though his heartbeat is doing something complicated that I will process at a later time. He doesn't speak. He watched all of it. He knows all of it. And when I shift back, slowly, deliberately, the ancient bones returning to their borrowed form, and straighten up and turn to face him in the dark garden, he looks at me with an expression I have no professional category for. He looks at me like I am the only solid thing in a world that just finished shaking. I reached up and brushed the gravel from my sleeve. I was cold. The shift burns metabolic reserves, and the garden night air was making its opinion known. The prince crossed the distance between us in 3 steps and stopped 6 inches away, which is precisely 3 inches closer than I keep most people, and which I noticed with something I am no longer even trying to categorize as non-relevant. He took my face in his hands, carefully, as though I was something that might choose to become very large and ancient again if handled incorrectly, and said, his voice barely carrying in the dark garden, "I have been trying to figure out what to call you." I waited. I don't think there's a word for it in this language, in any language. I looked at him, and the wolf, for the second time in 9 days, simply went quiet. The Alpha Prince is Emperor now. The coronation was this morning, 3 hours of ritual and incense, and the kind of ritual that takes 30 years to choreograph and 20 minutes to forget in the face of the thing it's actually for. He wore gold. The Empire wore its best face, and I stood in the front row of the Council Gallery, not the Omega's Gallery, not the Consort's alcove, but the Council Gallery, where I had been for 6 weeks, learning names and reading histories and auditing 30 years of compromised accounts, and I watched him become what he was always going to be if someone removed the obstacles. I removed the obstacles. I feel this is worth stating plainly. Prime Minister Gareth was tried, exposed, and exiled to the Southern Territories, stripped of title, assets, and the 22-year fiction of his loyalty on the basis of a documentary case so thorough that the tribunal's lead investigator took me aside afterward and asked, with genuine professional admiration, how long it had taken me to build it. 5 weeks, I told him. He looked like he wanted to lie down. I understand. 5 weeks is fast. But I was motivated. The Duke has withdrawn from court voluntarily, his social and financial situation being, as I designed, sufficiently compromised that the court is no longer a profitable venue for him. The council has been restructured, 3 fraudulent appointments terminated, 2 vacancies filled with people whose qualifications I personally verified. The kitchen staff has been replaced entirely, which I feel needs no further comment. The palace budget has been corrected for the first time in 11 years. The Eastern Trade Agreement, which Gareth had been quietly sabotaging to benefit his foreign sponsors, has been renegotiated on terms that are, I will say this with appropriate modesty, significantly better. I am objectively extraordinarily good at this. He found me at the desk in the East Wing that I have, over the last 6 weeks, quietly claimed by mine by the simple expedient of working at it every day until everyone accepted it as a fact. He was still in his coronation robes, which he clearly finds uncomfortable because he'd already removed the outer layer and the ceremonial pins, and he looked, beneath the gold, like himself. Which is to say, like someone carrying something large with the practiced ease of someone who has carried it for a long time, and has recently, for the first time, been offered someone to carry it with.
He set a box on the desk. I looked at it. Gold, obviously. This empire has a complicated relationship with restraint. The lid opened to reveal a hairpin of white jade and Imperial red, which is the formal consort piece, and a secondary crown, smaller, made for a head that is not the primary sovereign's. The ceremonies could be conducted quietly, he said, or publicly, as you prefer. A pause. I am told most Omegas prefer publicly. I looked at the crown. I looked at the pin. I looked at him, this man who has watched me dismantle a conspiracy, neutralize 6 threats, restructure an empire's finances, and transform into a very large, very ancient wolf in his private garden. And I felt the wolf in my chest doing that warm, enormous, inconvenient thing it does in his vicinity that I have stopped pretending is just biology. I picked up the jade pin. I set it down. I looked at the crown. I set the box gently to the side. I don't want a crown, I said. He blinked. Then what? A seat, I said. Head of the council, full authority over the Imperial budget, the Trade Commission, and the intelligence apparatus. An office in the East Wing that is actually mine. And I paused because the next part was not a negotiating position, but a statement of something I had spent 6 weeks deciding whether to say. And whatever this is. I gestured at the space between us, which had been, for 6 weeks, a space that both of us were circling with the wariness of people who suspect the ground is solid but are not yet willing to commit the full weight. Whatever this is, I want it to be real. Not political, not designated, not transacted. Real. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he sat down on the edge of the desk, not across from me, not at a formal distance, but next to me, in the specific informal arrangement of someone who has decided to stop performing the distance they don't feel. He said very quietly, "I've been offering you power." "You have," I agreed. "And you have refused the form of it and claimed the substance." "That is correct." A pause. Then even quieter. "And the other thing, the real thing." He was not, I noted, a man who found words easy when they mattered. I found this, in the privacy of my own complicated architecture, unreasonably endearing. "I've been wanting that since the dining hall," he said. "When you stood in front of the council and your eyes went gold, and I realized that fragile was possibly the most incorrect word anyone has ever used." He paused. "In any world." I looked at him. I let the wolf surface, not the shift, just the presence, the warmth of it, the ancient, patient thing that has been watching this man since the Imperial Hall and waiting for me to catch up with what it already knew. "Then we have an agreement," I said. He reached over and took my hand, which is an act so simple and human that I was briefly at a loss for a business analogy, and found that I didn't need one. I look out over the balcony at the city below, Streets I have mapped from above. Trade routes I have restructured from a desk. People whose livelihoods are, measurably and documentably, more secure than they were 6 weeks ago. I didn't come here to rule. I came here because whatever mechanism drops a ruthless, overworked CEO into the body of an Imperial consort decided, apparently, that my particular skill set was required. I have some questions about that mechanism that I intend to pursue in the 3rd quarter. I transmigrated into a body the world called weak, into a designation the world called decorative, into a role the world called subordinate. They gave me silk to wear and poisoned tea to drink and a political cage with gold bars and expected me to perform gratitude for the elegance of my captivity. They should have checked the fine print. Behind me, through the balcony doors, I can hear him, the Emperor of the Liang Empire, the Alpha who smells like the forest after a storm, the man my wolf recognized across a crowded hall on the first night of a life I did not plan to live, reviewing the trade documents I left on the desk with comments in the margin. He is, I have learned, a thorough reader. He is also, I have learned, a person who leaves replies in the margin when he disagrees, which is half the time, and our margin conversation has become its own kind of language, which is something I did not anticipate and find I cannot adequately categorize. I look out at the city. The evening air is cold and clean and carries the 10,000 scents of a living empire: bread, stone, lantern oil, river water, 10,000 heartbeats doing the ordinary, irreplaceable work of being alive. My wolf breathes it in. My CEO files it. I didn't come here to fall in love. I didn't come here to be saved or claimed or decorated with jade and ceremony and the careful architecture of a role that was built without me in mind. I came here, if I came here for anything, because an empire was failing, and the man at the center of it was surrounded by knives he couldn't see. I came here because some problems are too interesting to leave unsolved. And business, as it turns out, in any world, in any body, in any language, is always booming. Let 'em try. I'll burn this entire empire to ash before I let a single one of them lay a finger on him. Now, where did I hide that letter opener? The end.